Great, thank you. So thanks everybody for joining our session 8:30. Just give me a second to share our title slide there. So this is session 8:30, Multidisciplinary Community Service and Education. Can folks hear me okay? Apologies for that. Yep, as I mentioned, challenges with EventMobi and Zoom running at the same time. So yes, multidisciplinary community service and education. We'll start with our first speaker, Paige Aldridge. Please go ahead and share your slides, Paige, and I'll let you know when you're at 10 minutes.
Thank you, Vanessa. Just as it's loading there, could you just give me confirmation when you can see my screen?
There we go. Go ahead.
Thank you. So today I'll be providing an update on the latest activities for the international initiative through the WMO on the environmental sustainability of observing systems and methods. And this is following a presentation at the 57th CMOS conference last year, which was presented by my colleague, Mike Earle. And of course, I would just like to take a minute to thank my colleagues listed on the screen for all of their work with this initiative to date, as well as for making this presentation possible. So to dive right in, I'll just give a quick initiative overview. So observing systems and methods currently operational around the globe currently work to provide critical weather and climate data, but they can also result in significant environmental impacts. So the most common and frequently referenced example case of this would be radiosonde measurements, which are currently irreplaceable due to the value of the data, but also produced a significant amount of waste, and often these instruments go unretrieved. So the initiative began when it was noted that there was a clear dissonance with GBON requirements, essentially the requirement for more stations to fulfill WMO's spatial density requirements, which would in turn result in increasingly negative environmental impacts. So for reference, you can see a current map of Canada's GBON service stations on the right-hand side of the slide. So it's pretty evident that the north is a particular area of concern, as our stations are much more widespread. And capacity, resources, and access, among other things, are a lot more limited in this region. And through conversations at the management level, it quickly became apparent that leadership was required to prioritize the environmental impacts and sustainability of weather and climate observations. So this prompted the WMO to launch a targeted initiative with Canada, or more specifically, my director, Shannon Kaya, as the international focal point. So in order to take positive action towards more sustainable operations, both practical and pragmatic guidance is necessary for both national meteorological and hydrological services, in addition to industry. So our key goal or outcome when we started this initiative was to create meaningful recommendations for amendments to WMO documentation. So here we can see a mapped out timeline of the initiative to date, with some key highlights and accomplishments. So last year's CMOS session presentation focused on the first half of this timeline from October 2022 to May 2023. And today I'll be focusing and diving into the second half of the timeline and the accomplishments that are highlighted in blue text. So this includes a virtual international workshop hosted by Canada, an event at the MetTech World Expo last fall in Geneva, WMO's INFCOM 3 meeting just a few months ago, and then a bit of a forward-looking vision. And I'll just take a minute to note as well that we're still in phase 1, which focuses on meteorology and marine domains, with the potential to expand to more of a phase 2 to include hydrology and atmospheric chemistry in the future. So firstly, I'd like to touch upon a virtual international workshop, which was hosted by Canada in collaboration with WMO this past September, and it was open internationally to all and conducted over 2 days with 2 different themes, observing systems on day 1, and then policies, practices, and standards on day 2. So you'll see that we had a very widespread reach with 408 international registrations and demographics from participants across the world, which are displayed on the bottom right here. So this was our first time planning and executing a virtual workshop on the international scale, and all in all, a super successful forum for information sharing, discussion, and collaboration to advance recommendations and next steps, as well as to get the international community together and talking about this important issue. So I'll dive a little bit more into our discussions and takeaways in the next couple of slides here. So throughout the workshop, we wanted to place emphasis on a holistic, full life cycle assessment as a key approach to advance environmental sustainability beyond focusing solely on the technology side of things, to solve that question of how we can maintain existing system capabilities and essential data collection while also reducing our operational environmental footprint. So from end to end, we need to think about how we are planning and designing our observing systems. So for the example, we see the potential for tiered networks, as well as what we procure and the materials that we're using, including things like their biodegradability, and how or what we use to operate systems in the field. So this could also include clean energy use or green vehicle fleet. So some key takeaways that I think everyone came to agreement with at the end of the workshop was that there's a few things that will be required for coordinated advancement, and this includes assessing progress on established baselines, such as the continued international surveys and the potential for systematic opportunity scans within organizations. Setting clear expectations and the potential for incentives for the vendor community so that they may continue to drive meaningful innovations in the field. Working towards removing some of the unique barriers to implementation for some members, and working to transform the norm to build sustainability into fundamental models for both funding and procurement. So our goal here is definitely a culture shift towards the way we think and approach sustainability within our systems and methods. So this will need to be accomplished through a combination of both a top-down and a bottom-up approach. So we can call that one more of a hybrid model for success. And this ensures that decisions at the WMO are informed and practical for those who are responsible ultimately for implementing the change. And of course, not only innovation, but also an emphasis on community collaboration will be key. So next, I'd like to touch upon the MedTech World Expo hosted by the WMO in Geneva, Switzerland last October. So for those who are unfamiliar, this is a venue for industry representatives to showcase the latest developments in sustainable weather and climate observing systems and methods, and also to engage with each other and the broader user community to share and discuss opportunities and challenges to enhance sustainable outcomes. So some of the key ideas and initiatives highlighted during the forum include paying close attention to instrument material choices, possibilities of lowering or creating further efficiencies regarding infrastructure maintenance, incorporating the use of renewable energy sources, and implementing appropriate recycling programs where possible. And the panel discussion takeaways reinforced the need for both internal and external collaboration, working towards optimization of our networks, consideration to the entire end-to-end operational lifecycle, in addition to making informed procurement decisions. So noting that we do see a lot of repeating and recurring themes across many initiative activities, and this really does emphasize their widely recognized importance and maybe even a bit of sense of urgency to start taking positive action. And just in case anyone is interested, there is a link at the bottom of the slide to a recording of the full event that is publicly available online. And moving on, I'd definitely like to touch upon the INFCOM 3 meeting this past March, where there was some exciting decisions made at the WMO level regarding the future of the initiative. This includes following a balanced approach between implementing sustainable approaches to operations while still delivering on core mandates, including maintaining our data integrity. Recognizing the need for practical guidance material at the WMO level. So we've seen already a lot of positive activity here, such as amendments to the WIGOS manual and other regulatory materials. So this includes a new observing network design principle, as well as a technical specification in the SOF manual. So those are some big progress. Discussions also emphasize the importance of working together with industry to achieve mutually positive outcomes, dedicating specific resources, and this is a big one here, so such as a new WMO study group, which was dedicated towards tackling environmental sustainability in particular. So this means that there's going to be a lot more people power to drive this work forward, which is really exciting. And then also requesting that all INFCOM standing committees and advisory groups appropriately consider environmental sustainability in their work as well. So a lot has gone into providing the evidence base for these decisions at the WMO level, and I'm certainly very proud of the progress to date, and I'm really looking forward to a positive looking future for the initiative as well. So to conclude, we have come a very long way with a small team since the beginning of when this initiative started. And I think most would agree that this is an increasingly important and relevant topic with a few gaps that need to be addressed sooner rather than later. And we certainly can't do this alone. So active and wide-scale participation, including those who are attending this presentation, will be essential on the path to change. So we've also included some next steps or relatively near-term activities listed on the right. And this includes launching and implementing the new WMO study group and planning out some of the future activities. Hosting a second event on environmental sustainability at TICO 2024 this fall in Vienna, Austria. And some of my team members will be attending, which will be really fun as well. Then the potential for a follow-up survey to measure our progress to date. This might come a little bit later because we need to allow for a reasonable amount of time to be able to track meaningful progress. And finally, the potential to expand our scope to include the domains of hydrology and atmospheric chemistry in the future as well. So I'd like to also take a moment to thank you all for your attention during this presentation, and I can open it up now to questions if anyone has any that they would like to bring forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Paige, and excellent timing on your presentation. That was great. Maybe while I wait for a couple questions to come in, I'd just like to say I think this initiative is very interesting. I run a small network of research weather stations myself. This is something I think about often, but I found it challenging to implement. One small thing for myself is just we've recently started using reusable cable ties to just eliminate some of our plastic waste. So in these kind of things, I hope every little bit does help.
Definitely, it really does.
I don't see any questions yet, and maybe you already said this and I just happened to miss it as I was flipping back and forth between the Zoom and EventMobi, but what has the communication to Canadian meteorological and marine networks been like so far?
So we've been using a lot of forums such as CMOS. So there was a marine community at a SOT 12. So we've been doing lots of presentations at various conferences and events to try and communicate as widely and as broadly as possible across various platforms. So there's been a number of different presentations, and each presentation is providing the same information but a little bit updated to try and get a little bit more traction. So we always open up the floor to anybody. We've been very open with sharing our emails. We've been in touch with various different national meteorological and hydrological services as well. So we've done some international benchmarking, that type of thing. So we're leaving everything very open. We're super open and receptive to feedback as well if anybody has any ideas or anything else that they'd like to share. So I can provide some contact information if anybody would like to reach out as well. or has any suggestions.
Yeah, thanks. So we did have one question come in, and that's, are satellite systems included in this project?
Right now, the scope has not included. We are actually looking into it at the moment. So there is a document that is undergoing review at the moment that will look into incorporating Arctic observing missions as a possibility for future exploration of how we can incorporate observations that are environmentally sustainable. So I would say that we've initiated it, but there's not anything that I can share at this moment within this presentation that ties it into the WMO initiative. So that's something that we're looking into as our small team.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, great. Thank you for your time, Paige, and best of luck with the work.
Thanks very much.
Great. So I'd like to invite our next speaker, Rabah Hachelaf, apologies if I mispronounced your name, who will be speaking about recent advancements in Canadian operational radar production and services post CWRRP.
Yes, thank you, Vanessa. I will share my screen.
All right, you are not in presenter mode yet.
Yes, it's coming.
Excellent.
Are you seeing my full screen now?
Not quite yet. Nope. Maybe try one more time and then we can probably work with this.
I will try again.
Yeah, the same, not in presenter mode, but maybe for time, we could just go with this if you like.
And now, is it in the presenter mode?
I definitely saw you hit the presenter button, but no.
Yes,
I would maybe just go ahead with it, not in presenter mode. I'm sure we can all follow along. It's still the same, but I think you better get going, Rabah.
Okay. The slides are clear like that?
Yep, we can see your slides.
Okay. So, hello everyone. My name is Rabah, and I work at the Operational Remote Sensing Section, CMOS, of the Canadian Meteorological Center. Today I will present the recent advancement in Canadian operational radar production and services post-Canadian Weather Radar Replacement Program called CWRRP. I would like to mention that this work is the result of collaboration with several groups, both within and outside the Meteorological Service of Canada. Here is the outline of my presentation. I will begin my presentation with a brief introduction to the mandate of CMOS Group at the CWRRP. I will then describe the MSC operational radar production chain, followed by an inventory of product resulting from the CWRRP, and I will conclude my presentation by discussing the major innovation we have made in the radar production over the last few months. What is the mandate of CMOS? At CMOS, we are responsible for the real-time generation, development, delivery, and scientific support of data and products for the MSC users, and as well as for external and public clients. We are also, we represent the critical path before products are released to end users. We also take care of the management of data and products of the radar network, and we ensure that data and images are available to users in various and in standard formats. CMOS is also responsible for archiving raw and radar products nationwide scale. And finally, CMOS has also a role in monitoring the reception, production quality, and the dissemination of the data. This is an overview of the CWRRP project with the installation of the last radar at Half Moon Peak in BC. The Canadian Weather Radar now has a total of 33 radars, including one for test and training. Recently, a new scanning strategy was adopted to extend the range of the 6 lowest beams to 330 kilometers and keep the rest of the beams at the standard range, which is 240 kilometers. The extended range data is currently only available internally to operational forecasters. Finally, with the end of the CWRRP project, all of our radar products were migrated from 10-minute to 6-minute output frequency. This workflow shows the radar production process, which we can see that we receive raw Canadian S-band radar from the 32 sites, as well as NEXRAD level 2 and 3 from the US radar network. These data are ingested in various processes to generate different radar products in different format, which will be disseminated to various users. Note that we also provide the raw radar data converted to ODIM H5, which is sent to some commercial users and exchanged with NOAA. These data are also available through the Radar Open Data Pilot project. Here is an overview of some of our products and the users. There are a wide range of users of radar data, including internal users who use the data in numerical weather production systems, operational forecasters at different forecasting centers across the country, federal agencies such as NAV Canada and the Department of National Defense, DND, public users and universities, and private companies. in this table, I present an inventory of reader products that are available to the public at no cost via the Geomet, Datamart, and HPFX Collab. HPFX Collab is a new services which with it's like Datamart but with a large data storage capacity, which allows to make a large amount of reader data as well as other data publicly available. As you can see here, we have three composite products: rain, snow, rate, surface precipitation type, and rain, snow, rate, no casting extrapolation. Regarding the single product, regarding the single products, we generate 2D products in GeoTIFF format, which are the dual polarization quantitative precipitation estimate and the maximum expected size of hail. Both of those two products are available on HPFX Collab. We have also the 3D volume scan, which are available on ODIM H5 format. And finally, we have the three products available in GIF formats. They are images available on Datamart, which are the single radar DPKPE, single radar KP, and the 24-hour accumulated DPKPE. Now I will present a hardware solution to mitigate. Now I will present our main developments and innovations over the last few weeks, over the last few months. Here is an improvement on the calibration, and the quality of the reader data, where the RFI, which are the radio frequency interferences, are mitigated. This is made possible with a hardware solution involving the CWRRP teams with other collaboration and partners. The solution has been put in place since May 2nd, 2024 on King Radar in Ontario, and it will be implemented over the next few weeks for the entire radar network. Not the entire radar network, but only for some selected radar suffered from this RFI contamination. Another innovation is the surface precipitation type product, which is one of the new emerging products made possible by the radar renewal program. It combines precipitation rate and particle classification composites from readers with numerical weather prediction model data to generate data with 5 types of surface precipitation with different level of intensities. This product has been available to the public via the Geomet platform since January 2023 and should be available on the Weather Office website and weather app in fall 2024. Looking ahead, we have 2 key areas of focusing to improve this product. First, we will improve the rain and snow thresholds intensities, and the second one is to integrate the hail data from the dual polarization radar data.
Two more minutes, Rabah.
Okay. As you can see here, one of the upcoming innovation is the integration of the dual polarization technique of US radar to remove non-meteorological echoes on the quantitative precipitation estimate composite. As you can see in this example, using product from this technique allow to remove many non-meteorological echoes such as ground clutter, radio frequency interference, and biological echoes. The new product will replace the existing radar composite on the Weather Office and Weather app, and is expected to be available in the fall of 2024. The last innovation that I will present today is the synthetic radar composite. The main goal of this project is to generate virtual radar from different data sources like satellite, lightning, numerical weather prediction models, and others to fill the coverage gaps of the actual radar network, particularly over regions with high air and maritime traffic. In this example here, we compare virtual radar against real radar. The virtual radar here is derived from GOES-16 data and this is done near Marble Mountain in the Newfoundland. Overall, we notice an agreement between the virtual radar data and the real radar data. This agreement is true for moderate and heavy precipitation when the convective precipitation have strong satellite signature. Additional work will be done in the future to explore the use of artificial intelligence techniques to improve the results. And that's it. Here is the list of our collaborators with whom we have worked over the last few years to make the new radar products available and accessible to the different users. And here you can find some contact information in case you have any question or need. Thank you for your attention.
Great, thanks, Rabah. That was a great presentation. Sorry for your challenges in getting your slides up, and I think that means, unfortunately, we don't have time for questions. But if you're able to pop over to Event Mobi, there might be some questions that come in the Q&A, and hopefully you can answer those online.
Yes, no problem.
Thank you again. So now I'd like to invite our third speaker, Laura Lam, to speak about the validation of actual reported cases of drifting vessels.
Okay. This one, share. So check.
There you
Just
go.
tell me, Vanessa, when you see it.
I do see your slides, but like Rabah, you're not in presentation mode yet.
Okie doke.
There you go. Now we see it.
So it worked before. Okie doke.
Yeah.
So good afternoon. I'm Laura Lam. I can go?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, good afternoon. I'm Laura Lam. Me and the contributors listed here all work at the Environmental Emergency Response Section at the Canadian Meteorological Center. I'm going to speak about the validation of reported cases of drifting vessel. Here's the outline. To begin with, I'm going to talk about the operational context. At ERS, we have an in-house tool, SPY. The image to the right is what you see from SPY upon opening it up. From it, we can launch ERS dispersion model, MLDPN, to respond to our atmospheric mandates. We had development for aquatic kernels towards these two, and namely it's the kernel spill for oil spill and leeway for the drift of objects. I'm going to talk about the leeway. What is leeway? Leeway is the motion of the object. induced by wind and waves relative to the ambient current. The drift calculation method we use is the US Coast Guard 9-parameter leeway. We obtained a table of 110 objects. Each object has a set of 9 parameters associated with it. An example is shown on bottom here, bottom box. So 9 being 3 by 3, 3 being for the downwind leeway. That means along the direction of the wind, 3 for the crosswind leeway right, and 3 for the crosswind leeway left. Crosswind being perpendicular to the wind direction. Why do we have a right and left? Well, it depends on the orientation of the object with regard to the wind direction when it starts to drift, which can also change during the drift period. I'm going to show sensitivity test to the wind. We ran the drift model several times. First with 7% of the wind direction, along the wind direction, all the other parameters 0, then 6%, 5% downwind, and then 5% downwind, 1% crosswind, increments of 1% crosswind up to 5% crosswind. So it's based on a real case scenario, real case event rather, and it's off Vancouver Island coast. So the ship started to drift from the yellowish icon and ended up over the red dot here after drifting for about 35 hours. So here we go. So here in the middle, it's 7%, 6%, 5% downwind with no crosswind, and to the right, it's 1%, 2, 3, 4, 5% crosswind to the right and to the left here. So we can say that the ship drifted to the right of the wind direction, and it takes some crosswind so that the area of probabilities end up over the actual location of the ship. Next, I'm going to talk, oh, I have to go twice. Next, I'm going to talk about validation and the number of a drift event reported by the NEEC, heads up and advisories since 2020. It totals up to about 52. The count by type is shown in the upper right box here. And from those 52, the number of events for which we could find AIS data, that means the track of the vessel, it dwindles down to 26, half of it, and for which we could find a drift period that can be inferred or presumed, hence validation can be done. So that number comes up to 13, so a quarter of the reported events. So 13 being 5 fishing vessel and 8 large vessel. The number of each hours validated for each of these events is shown in the chart to the bottom left. So we see that event number 2, 5, and 6 holds the highest number of drift hours. So I'm going to show drift modeling for these events, starting with the event 5 and 6. It's the same ship. The AIS data, that is the real model of the ship rather, is shown by black dots. So there's so many of them that it's a full line, black line. So the ship drifted from point A to B, was tugged from B to C, and then drifted again from C to D. So in our table of 110 objects, we have only 3 named object large vessel, 1 and 2 being in loaded and ballast conditions. The third one, a 50-degree listing rowboat ship, is not to state the condition of the ship. So I'm going to start with event number 5 from point A to point B. So we have 3 simulations here, large vessel 1 and 2. I put another one, sailboat 1, which is not what would be chosen at first for a drifting large vessel, but here used as an example for another object from the table, which is a possible best fit. And it's the same event that I took for the sensitivity test. So here we go. So we see that the best fit here is not large vessel 1 or 2, it's sailboat 1 amended. Now I'm going to go to event number 6, same ship as event number 5. The vessel drifted again for 39 hours. This time, the third modeling drift result that is shown has been taken with object life raft. And what's interesting with this case is the ship drifted to the left of the wind direction here. You see to the left for the first 24 hours. And then if you see here, if you look at the attention at the pointer here, it drifted to the right of the direction. So first left and then right of the wind direction. So it's not the same object that's a best fit for the same ship. So this is a challenge to choose the right object or the right set of 9 parameters. The next event I'm going to talk about is event number 2. It's for both simulation, object large vessel 1 has been taken. The difference between the two modeling results is the one to the left has been done with the current operational ocean model, and the one to the right is with the next version of the ocean model. A time series is shown for both of these models, red for the next version and blue for the current operational model. At a location about here, more than halfway through. So it's about 23 UTC, which is about here. So we see that the next version of the operational model holds higher or stronger currents. It allows the probability, as when I'm going to animate it, to be further west because currents are southeast from the southeast. And here I'm going to stop it here. So from here you can see that it with currents stronger, it moves further west. It's not a lot, you can say, yeah, sure, because it's an event where the winds are the contributing factor to the motion of the ship. So current accuracy helps to better validate. Next, I'm going to my before last slide. It's event number 7. It's a large vessel also. It drifted for 24 hours. Winds were southeasterly more than 20 knots for the first 12 hours. So if currents are not that strong, so we'd expect the ship, which is at the eastern end here, to move to the northwest. However, in the zoom in areas, you can see that the ship has been winding around. General direction is towards the southwest. Why is it so? Is it current accuracy? Is it maneuvers on board ship? We don't know. So this limits the number of hours that we can do verification. So the validation we did was starting from the further west, starting from the second like yellowish icon in the middle here till the red dot there. So my concluding remarks, out of 52 cases, we were able to do validation for a quarter of it. It's reported cases, but it's not request. Request for modeling is about 1 to 3 per year. Large vessel and fishing vessels are the most reported ADRIFT objects. In our table, we have 3 named large vessel and 8 named fishing vessels. There's not a specific one that fits for all event, as I've tried to show. It's no one size fit all. So other object can be taken as a substitute, or we can try to get those numbers right if we have time. There are other limiting factors to do the validation. That is the accuracy of models and unknown maneuvers on board the vessel, to name a few. Validation is ongoing. I'll be more than happy to run those drift model again if we have additional data or information, and we are going to try to move towards quantitative metrics for the validation. Discussion has started with the client, and our goal is to set a common understanding on the interpretation of drift model results and its limitation, to orient development to improve the product, and provide this service this fiscal year. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. That was a great presentation. Also great with your timing. Kudos to everybody so far for being great with their timing with their presentation slides. This isn't my area of expertise, so I feel challenged to ask a question while we wait for things to come up on Event Mobi. I don't see anything yet. I sort of got, next steps from your conclusion slides, but any future work that maybe you didn't get a chance to put on your conclusion slide that you'd like to mention?
Well, any other comments you mean?
Future work. You mentioned some ongoing work on your conclusions, but I was just wondering about future work.
Well, it depends on the discussion we're gonna have with the clients. So it could be it depends on what's important and the resources and what we can do. So we have to have that conversation going. Do you have any idea? Did you have any idea in mind yourself?
No. Yeah, no, it sounds like you need to get that feedback first. So yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still don't see anything in the Event Mobi, but yeah, maybe please take a look at that when you get a chance. And otherwise, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thanks.
Great. Now I will invite Charles, our fourth speaker. We're kind of switching gears to the second half of the session. Will be a little bit more about climate change adaptation and mitigation. So Charles will be speaking to us about consumers and citizens making an impact on Canada's net zero challenge.
Okay, thank you. I'll share screen.
Oh, Laura, I think you need to stop
Yeah.
sharing your screen, please. Thanks, Laura. Oh, Charles. Oh, there we go. I was seeing your Event Mobi screen, but now I see your presentation and it is in presentation mode. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So thanks, Vanessa. My name is Charles Lin, and I'm going to talk about an outreach initiative on Canada's net zero challenge. So the initiative is called Impact Net Zero, and the team members consist of a small group of volunteers. They all have day jobs, so their day job affiliation is not shown here because the views expressed here are not of their organizations, and this is their personal view. Full disclosure, we have not accepted any external funding for the work described. Any expense has been covered by myself. So the context. I think we all know that Canada has made a commitment to reach net zero by 2050. Right? Net zero refers to zero. The zero refers to emissions, carbon emissions. The net refers to if there are some residual emissions that cannot be reduced, then you have to take measures to cancel off those emissions, such as by planting trees which can absorb the emissions, and hence the word net. So net, zero, both words are important by 2050. Now, at the federal level, there have been a commitment, but there are also jurisdictions in Canada who have adopted their own net zero plans. An example is the city that I live in, Toronto, and Transform TO is an ambitious plan for the city to reach net zero by 2040, with interim targets and reporting updates in place. It's one of the most ambitious city targets in North America. In this effort, governments, corporations, and individuals, such as you and I, all have a role to play. And my outreach initiative focuses on the role of Canadians as, first of all, consumers. We have dollars to spend, And as citizens, we can exercise our civic responsibility. And I will show also some of the products that, that we have on our website. So a recent survey of what do Canadians really think about climate change. So the big trends are indicated by these 6 arrows, and I want to focus on the one enclosed in red. There is a gap between the general support for action and support for specific actions. In other words, what actually can a person do? Specific actions. There's general support for action, but when it comes to what can you and I do, there's a bit of a unknown. There's a gap between those two kinds of support. And that is what I'm addressing here. Actions that individuals as citizens and consumers can take. So consumer on the right, citizen on the left. As consumers, we can make choices on how we move around, what we eat, how we use energy at home. And studies have shown that household emissions, we can get a good handle of them. In particular, we can figure out how these individual choices that we make can actually mitigate our carbon emissions. And this is based on science. Right? And I show some references there. IPCC 2022, for the first time, has a chapter on consumer-based mitigation. UNEP, I will show a highlight from one of their reports. And Ivanova et al. Puts this in the published literature in the refereed scientific domain. As citizen, one of the most powerful ways we can do to spread the word is to share your stories. We can engage with community groups and we can get involved politically. There are other things we can do. I'm going to highlight those 3 because that is what I have started myself. So this framework on mobility, food, and residential. I'm not going to go into details here, but you can see it's color-coded: avoid, shift, improve. And these are examples. You can reduce travel distance. You can adopt low-carbon transport modes. You can have a more efficient vehicle. And on this scale is the number of CO2 equivalent tons per capita per year that can be mitigated by these various initiatives. So I'm not going to go into details here, but there's a good scientific basis for these kinds of numbers. In other words, if you do something, that something can result in a reduction, a potential reduction of CO2 emissions by this much. And on our website, we have conducted interviews with people who have taken different decisions on personal mobility, Net Zero Cafe, and we have also interviewed with a resident association representative who is an expert on how you can exercise your consumer dollars to improve energy efficiency in your home. So that's the right-hand column. Now we move to that's the left-hand column. Now we move to the right-hand column as citizens. Now, a recent initiative in the province of Ontario is the government, the provincial government, has decided to overrule an independent energy regulator, the Ontario Energy Board, which says that the OEB ruled just before Christmas that Enbridge Gas can no longer charge new customers to connect to the gas network by amortizing that cost over the existing customer base. So we don't need to get into details here, but the point is that this does not provide any incentive to developers to use less costly initiatives such as heat pumps and geothermal and so on. And in 15 hours after the OEB issued the ruling, the Minister of Environment said that they will change the law to overturn this ruling by an independent energy regulator. And the result is Bill 165. So we have a write-up on what are the issues behind Bill 165. Now, the Conservatives have a majority, so Bill 165 has actually recently been passed. I have written to my MPP, who is a Conservative member, Eglinton Lawrence, focused on the red text. I have been in touch with Dimitri of your office to arrange a meeting to discuss Bill 165. I raised 3 points. Bill 165 provides a level playing field, and if you overturn it, the developers have no incentive to look at cheaper and less and greener initiatives. Second point, the Bill 165 overrules an independent energy regulator. And by doing so, the transparency, accountability of costing decisions is reduced. And the third is a big question: what is Ontario's overall energy plan? Ontario has been, the government has been making a lot of publicity about nuclear, refurbishing old nuclear plants, which cost a lot of money, right? Because it's a big ticket expense. And yet the Doug Ford government seems to be pivoting to wind and solar because of the trending in the world, right? So the Doug Ford government is saying, well, we should get on the wind and solar bandwagon as well. So that implies lithium mining and wind farms, solar farms. So my question here: what is the overall energy plan? So this was sent April 28th, and after weeks of going back and forth between me and her office and Robin Martin's office, I finally secured a 30-minute face-to-face meeting with her. So 2 messages: we agreed to disagree on some points. Right? The Conservatives have a majority. And so Bill 165 was passed, and we agreed to disagree that Bill 165 says that the OEB overstepped its boundary in trying to set policy. And I also learned that in the overall energy plan of Ontario actually involves the Ring of Fire. Right? So this is an exploration of minerals, and this is a big decision that the province will have to face, right? And Indigenous issues, costing issues, environmental issues will all come into play. So this initial meeting, this is my first meeting with the MPP. We had a cordial discussion, and we have set the tone for further interaction.
Just over a minute left there, Charles.
Okay. Urban Heat Island, I'm working with a group of resident associations which have a lot of local knowledge. And this is a network of networks approach. I know my own RA, but I don't know the other RAs. But there are members of my RA who know some of the other RAs. So I work through them, and then we have this network of networks approach. And I live in the Yonge and Eglinton area, which is a highly built up areas with lots of towers going up. And there are many issues relating to Urban Heat Island, densification, green space, cooling centers, equality, climate change. And we have sent a letter with 12 signatories from 10 RAs, contacting 2 city councillors, and we have a meeting set up. So this is a visual of the Yonge and Eglinton area. The gray high-rises, the gray towers are already existing. The blue towers are under construction. The reddish-brownish towers are proposed or approved. And I live somewhere in this cluster. So you can see that this is a highly built-up environment. and continuing to be highly built up. Right? And so urban heat island is indeed an issue. So to conclude, as consumers and citizens, we can each act to do what we think is right to combat climate change. Consumers can make choices with their dollars. Citizens can exercise their civic responsibility. And local groups are sources of knowledge, centers of action, and sources of inspiration. And I have chosen to work with resident associations, and to spur action with local group, I have forged relationships, I have shared stories, and I have built trust. And this network of networks approach is, I think, is paying off. So we are entering into an advocacy role to approach and lobby politicians at different levels. And Impact Net Zero provides stories, explainers, and tools and tips. Like we will have an explainer on this tool. And there are other tools that are not well known, but very useful. So thank you, and I will stop here and take questions and discussion.
Thanks, Charles. That's great. We do have a question already. I'm not sure who it's from, but it just says, how can we help your group?
Well, you can help our group by getting in touch with me, and my email address is shown there. And let me know what your interest is, where you are. And one lesson that I learned is that the more local and the more personal you make it, the more chance you have to spur action. Right? So, for example, if you want to talk about the carbon tax, that's just too general. And most people don't really care about the carbon tax. But if you talk about this and you happen to live here, then people care. Right? And you can see the reddish brownish towers. There are many of them. Cranes are going up, and discussion, community hearings are going on with these towers being built up. So get in touch with me, and we can talk and see what we can do together.
Great, thank you. We are at time. Charles, maybe I'll just get you to put your website in the Event Mobi chat when you get a chance. I think that that would be nice to share. Okay,
thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So moving on to our fifth talk, Stephanie Arnold. Please go ahead and share your slides, and Stephanie will be speaking to us about expanding horizons and expectations, lessons from innovation and adaptation. Stephanie and Megan, maybe perhaps you want to introduce yourselves.
Hello. I think everyone can see the screen, so I'll just get started. Thank you for everyone attending this presentation on expanding horizons and expectations, some of the lessons from innovations in adaptation. So who are we? I'm Megan Moyna. I'm a climate action specialist with the Prince Edward Island Federation of Agriculture. We're a non-government organization representing island farmers. We speak to issues that affect all island farmers, including climate initiatives. And we are the largest general agricultural organization in Prince Edward Island, with a membership of over 80% of all registered producers on the island.
Thanks, Megan. And I'm Stephanie Arnold. I'm with Climate Atlantic. Climate Atlantic is a nonprofit that operates in Atlantic Canada. We're funded by the federal government and the 4 Atlantic provincial governments to provide free adaptation services to individuals, sectors, communities, governments, and so on.
And I'm Heather Harris, and I'm a support specialist with Climate Atlantic.
So to provide a bit of context, we are partnering with Climate Atlantic to create the first agricultural climate adaptation plan for Prince Edward Island. In recent years, Prince Edward Island has experienced a variety of severe climatic events that have had negative impacts on all aspects of society, including the agricultural sector, for example, Hurricanes Dorian in 2019 and Fiona in 2022, as well as drought in 2020. These negative impacts are not limited to the environmental damage caused, but all aspects of society. And based on current research and data, the impacts of a changing climate will only increase in severity and frequency over time, highlighting the need for a plan for adaptation. So while we were initiating this project, we were doing research on existing adaptation plans and different methodologies. The National Adaptation Strategy was created by the Department of Environment and Climate Change in 2022. They highlighted 5 interconnected systems that need to be addressed to create resiliency in all aspects of society and to create more comprehensive adaptation responses. And the plan highlighted the need for regional and sector-specific plans to be created that aligned with the national strategy for comprehensive collaborative approach to reaching all our goals. So compared to the traditional approach to adaptation, we took a hybrid approach or non-traditional approach. In other plans that we saw, it was more impact-driven decision-making, focused more on climate risks specifically, either multiple or only one, and used only one approach to determine actions. Our approach, we incorporated multiple adaptive planning methodologies, including adaptive pathways, bottom-up engagement, and risk-based approach. We used 3 pillars of sustainability, not only looking at climate, but the social and economic risks that may be impacting our ability to adapt. And we also wanted to address direct and indirect barriers.
So to carry out this engagement the adaptation plan, we had a variety of engagement sessions. We started off by holding by commodity group. So groups like potatoes, perennials, livestock. And then in our second round, we did geography based. So we moved across PEI, going to different communities and engaging with producers in those communities. We started off our sessions by asking them to identify risks that were facing the sector. But as Megan just said, we were going with a kind of non-traditional approach. So we were looking at both climatic risks as well as business, economic, and social risks. And so we would have 2 different risk matrices, and we would get producers to rank the risks. So how severe are the consequences if this risk occurs, but also how likely is it of a risk to occur? And as well, we had 2 different timelines. So kind of like an immediate term, 0 to 10 years, and then a longer term, 10 plus years. So after we identified risks, then we got more into the adaptation actions. So based on the risks we identified, what are some responses that they could carry out to address these risks? And then what are some weaknesses that are inherent to the industry that maybe our plan could attempt to address, but as well strengths that are inherent to the industry that we could leverage. And then we got into adaptation pathways, which Stephanie is going to talk about later on in this presentation. But the question was, which actions open up future opportunities? So if we do X action, what then becomes possible?
So some of the responses that we've received so far in the first year of the project, we were able to identify 144 risks across climate and social and economic, and 120 responses that address those risks. Stakeholders ranked responses on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being very low and 5 being extremely high. And these actions were prioritized based on the urgency and then feasibility and the shared interest among different commodities. And from that categorization, we were able to identify 7 key actions that will be included in the plan. Here's just a table kind of showing what our raw data look like, and how stakeholders during engagement ranked each risk, and each action also has a corresponding risk theme to it. You can see that the ones that will be the focus ranked extremely high in urgency and feasibility, and had a number of commodities that identified it as needed. And here's just a graph showing the total risks and responses. The orange and yellow being the responses, orange being the social and economic, and the yellow being the climatic responses. The dark blue being the risks that were identified for the social and economic, and the light blue being the climate and agronomic You can see the cost in finance and labor scored the highest for the business and social risks, and high temperature and moisture and rain scored highest on climate.
So to give you a sense of the outputs that are going to go in the plan, the interesting thing about using multiple risks at the same time and challenging the participants, mainly producers or farmers, is also what responses can address multiple risks. I did put in sort of black boxes and highlighted which ones we tend to think as maybe more traditional adaptation. So if we look at that second column where it says improve soil health, we just gave some examples, but there's a lot of conversations and a lot of ongoing work in terms of the types of activities that can go into improving soil health. And then when Heather mentioned, the question we asked and we pose is what becomes possible? And so let's say we do a great job increasing soil health, maybe a lot more biologically active, storing carbon more, what becomes possible? And then the producers tell us, well, better soils lead to a better and healthier crop. And that then could lead to increased profitability. Another example is that better soils means there are more nutrients available in the soil so that you don't have to add as much supplemental nutrients, and that helps with input price. So by lowering inputs and also being able to hopefully increase the sale value of a better and healthier crop, you lead to increased profitability. Then we weren't really satisfied there. Well, what becomes possible if you have increased profitability? And that's really where the conversation opened up. Almost all the farmers we spoke to were really into farming because it's a passion. A lot of them are working at basically break even or even taking on day jobs so they can continue to farm even though they're at a loss. But if we're able to do things, if adaptation is able also to support profitability, then it opens up doors, meaning they're not making suboptimal decisions, maybe because of cash flow constraints. They have more time and resources to plan and respond to challenges, which really speaks to proactive adaptation planning. It's going to improve their mental health. They're able to invest in more agricultural and more storm resilient infrastructure and other component of adaptation. And also they won't discourage next generation to farm. And so we can see clearly here, there are specific things we think of as traditional adaptation, but if you pluck them sort of in isolation and don't really connect the other pieces of other risks such as labor or profitability, then engagement and impact will be sacrificed. Another big piece we talked about was labor and capacity. And, having skill building capacity in agronomy or animal health might not be the types of things we normally think about in terms of adapting to climate change. So how can we what if we supported cooperatives? What if we are adding extra capacity that way? How can that support adaptation? Well, you can see in the black boxes, it also eventually leads to not making suboptimal decisions and having more time and confidence to plan ahead. And all of those things eventually also lead to profitability, which also what we talked about is kind of like becomes a cyclical positive circle, as opposed to a negative cycle where maybe challenges in cash flow or challenges in labor are asking you to make suboptimal decisions. Maybe you're going onto the field when it's wet, when you know it can cause soil compaction, but you have to do it because of the constraints you're faced under. And also it kind of seems like a domino effect where you spiraling downward. This one, if there's such a thing as spiraling upward, is sort of the new trend and a new direction that we want to take.
So I'm just going to go over some kind of surprises and lessons learned from this process so far. So the first surprise was that it seemed overall for producers that it's easier to identify the non-climatic risks versus the climate risks. This picture here is showing you from the same session. The pink is the social, the business, the economic risks, and the green is the more climatic risks. So overall, they're identifying fewer climate risks. And when they do identify them, they are, on average, are ranking slightly lower for the consequence or the likelihood to occur versus those pink ones that are all clustered up in that high category. As well, it seems like connecting the dots for the adaptation pathway seemed overall easier for producers, and it was more so the experts that seemed they were behind on that process. And just some general lessons learned. If we had taken more of a traditional approach, just looking at trying to address climate risks, it would have created a very different plan than what we have so far. It would have added pressures to producers because it would have ignored their contexts and their needs. So for example, they might, by trying to adapt just to the climate risks, might add additional pressures, maybe in terms of costs or finance. And overall, that would have potentially led to producers being less engaged in the climate action process moving forward. And overall, there seems to be a genuine desire from producers to adapt. It's not the expertise that's the limiting factor. It's more so things like time, money, and labor. And our goal with this plan is to address those enabling conditions and address the limiting factors overall so that they can be successful in the sector overall and adapt to climate change. So thank you so much, and we'll happily take any questions that folks might have.
Thank you. That was great, very interesting, and also timely. So thank you for that. Yeah, I kind of like some of your lessons learned that you showed. I appreciate that. You know, showing that it's not necessarily the adaptation expertise that becomes limiting in these things. We have climate action plans in the BC Ministry of Forests where I work, and we've found similar things. It's really best when it comes from those working in the industry themselves. It sort of sounds like that's what I heard you say. Is that right?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, just on the Event Mobi app, it doesn't appear like you have any questions yet. You do have another minute, so maybe I'll just wait. Yeah, and I think I also heard you say that for the producers themselves, again, maybe it's not a lack of understanding of what the climate risks are. It's really about their time and their ability to yeah, just to put in that time, the money, and the labor for adaptation. Maybe just quickly, next steps, since I don't see any other questions coming in yet.
Megan, you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah, so the next steps for year 2 of the project, we're going to be conducting interviews with some key private and industry professionals to kind of walk through and discuss the 7 actions that we identified that will be the key portion of the plan, and kind of try and generate buy-in, how they can potentially take action on these actions beyond the creation of the plan and actually implement them, and what resources and the cost and what needs to happen for them to actually take action beyond plan. And
Right.
hopefully by winter time that'll be done, and we'll actually have the plan drafted in March.
Yeah, so an implementation plan on top of your adaptation plan. That makes sense. Yeah. Great. Well, I didn't see any other questions come in. There does seem to be a lag between Zoom and Event Mobi, so please pop over there and see if you get any questions. So our 6th and final talk, and thank you again to Megan, Stephanie, and Heather. 6th and final talk is by Serge, who is an active member of CMOS, and he would like to speak to us about the ripple effect caused by the establishment of a permanent cell within the Congress of within the CMOS Congress scientific program. So I can see your slides, Serge. You're not in presentation mode just yet. Oh, now you are. Perfect. Go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed the Congress so far, what you've seen. It's not a scientific presentation, so that doesn't mean don't go away. I was thinking, how could I, if I should present this this presentation, because it's not scientific, but I presented in the sense of about organizing our science discussion in our society. The first place is the Congress, and then the second place is overall, how can we actually see the structure, the way we talk about our science in the society. So this is not, for those who doesn't know, I'm the president, current president of the CMOS. So it's not a presentation given by the president. It's more a presentation given by a CMOS member who has been on the scientific program a few times. Actually, this is my 4th time. So I start to learn and start to see how we could improve the way we organize the program. And then, because I'm thinking also outside the box, I'm thinking also, how could we actually also find a way to organize the way we talk about our science in the society. So I'm presenting from Halifax, Chickpook. It's actually unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Whoop. Okay, so the Congress Scientific Program, basically the way it's organized, you have plenaries, you have parallel sessions. In the plenaries, you have invited speaker. Sometimes there is workshop, people propose workshop. There is the public talk that happened yesterday. And then there is a call for session. And then after that, there is general session. So the parallel session are abstract submitted in session that were actually proposed in December. And then the rest of the abstract, we tried to fit them in the session that were proposed. Otherwise, we put them in general session. This is actually a general session. So in the parallel session, you have the oral, you have the poster. Some people actually invite the first talk, they invite a guest speaker that will talk 30 minutes. And sometimes people suggest a discussion panel in their session. So that's roughly the way we organize the parallel session. So the plenaries, they are actually it's a scientific program committee who talk, and also the local arrangement committee who actually organize the plenaries. And the plenaries will often, well, most of the time actually, they will actually, the people will be invited are actually to speak about the theme of the Congress. So it's the Scientific Program Committee which organized this. The parallel session, like I said, there is a call for session in November, December. So they're more specialized session, and it's your colleague actually suggesting this session. And what we noticed, there is recurrent one. In the past 2-3 years, there's recurrent one that people keep submitting, which is a good thing. And then they become also the session convener, we call. They become members of the scientific program committee in a sense. Then after that, the general session. So in the past, there was too many to choose from. And last year we decided, okay, the scientific program committee, I was part of it. We decided, okay, we're going to reduce, and we reduced to one. And this year we fixed a set of general session of 8, and we're going to go a little bit further. So yeah, I'll go further. So building the set of CMOS general session. So what I've done, I invited my members of the past scientific program committee from last year. I invited them and said, okay, we did the open session last year. It was not a good idea, just one session, general session. So how can we actually build a set of general session? And then we basically took this approach, the science discipline and the scientific approach. And with that, trying to build a set of general session. So the discipline, and nothing is written in stone here. It's just still idea that we try to develop and implement eventually if it's accepted. So we have the 4 disciplines: atmosphere, ocean, climate, multidisciplinary. And the approach you have to think about doing science and sharing science. And I think it's, I don't want to insult people in this sharing science that it's you're not doing science. Yes, you're doing science, but it's in a different way, different approach. So, but it's basically that 4 discipline, doing science, sharing science. A little bit easier to understand. So you go from theoretical to apply, from observation to the creation of the data versus the use of the data to share to the community, also used by the operation and service education. So by doing that, you can see that you could actually have a set of 28 general sessions. So it's better than 1, which was last year, but it's way too much general session. So we came back to basically a little bit the level up here, or I think, yeah, the theoretical to community, and then say, okay, we're gonna use that. So the 4 discipline, and then the 2 main approach, theoretical to apply, and community service and education. And what I've done in this table, I basically took all the sessions that we received and I put them under this set of eight teams, if I can say, that we use to develop the general session. And as you can see very quickly, we have a lot of session in the approach of theoretical to apply, and we're a little bit poor in terms of the community service and education, more like the sharing science. So this is our session here, 80-30. So by doing that, you can already see that we're not balanced in terms of the approach. We have more theoretical to apply. I think we should actually try to have a little bit more in the community service and education, how we actually use the data and how do we educate people of the science we're doing. So by building the scientific program using the general session, allowed to better cover all the science topic under CMOS, it's also helped to develop a tool, and I've been working on that, developing a tool actually to schedule faster, in a sense, having an idea of what will be the program very quickly so that we can share to the people who submitted and then have the program a little bit faster than in the previous year. And like I said, there is recurrent session, which I see that could become more permanent bricks of the CMOS Congress program. And we could offer, for example, 3-5 years presence of these sessions, and then they could reapply after 5 years. And like I said, community service and education, we do have session, but not that much. So I start to think about this. It's been a while I'm thinking about this. So like having the set of these general session. So I was thinking, so by doing that, we develop a set of general session and think of this the set of general session as label that we give, like the 4 discipline and the 2 approach. So they're labeled a framework that actually we could use to exchange about the science we do under CMOS. But let's say we actually ask 8 people to deal with this general session. They could be picked across the country, and those could be, these 8 people could be part of the Congress, the scientific program committee for a few years. So creating a permanent cell within the science program committee. So the ball of BR is basically representing this group of 8 dealing with the general session and become a permanent cell within the the science program committee. So these 8 people, so 4 representative of the discipline and 4 representative covering the research and service. So you will have 2 people on the theoretical to apply science approach, and then you will have 2 other people from the service community and education approach. So I was thinking again. Okay, so we have a set of 8 general session, which actually it's a framework of talking about the science, like in terms of discipline and in terms of approach. And then if you put 8 people in charge of these sessions, then you have you created a cell within the scientific program committee that will become used to about how to organize the Congress. That's what's happening with me, actually. It's been the 4th time, and I'm starting to see how we could actually improve things. So using these 8 labels also to approach the science within CMOS. So we have the group of 8 dealing with the general session. But what about another group of 8 that will use also the framework of the general session? And then what we see, we have a team that help to plan, guide the Congress program through these responsible of these set of general session. But if we think in terms of the science in the in CMOS, what I'm thinking is like with this set of equation for not equation, this set of the framework, discipline, and approach. So we could actually have a way to think about the Congress, the organization of the Congress, and also I think the group of 8 could actually help to guide the science in terms of publication, seminar, workshop in the society, and also becoming a voice, national or international, representing various discipline or various approach. So representing CMOS and then being able to give what CMOS is thinking in terms of a certain topic or subject. So
Got a minute left there, Serge.
yeah, no problem. So when I think about this, the group of 8, again, you have the Congress, which is a very important things that we do. We have something what I call the executive body, which is basically dealing with the business of CMOS. So the center chair and the executive committee and the council, these are the group actually making decision or giving some suggestion that eventually could be implemented. And we have the scientific committee. And also we have our partner and peripheral committee like education, university, private sector, etc. So let's think about this group of 8. Is it the science committee? Because we have a science committee. Is it the science committee I'm talking about? I don't know. I frankly don't know. It's still an idea. But what I think is from the impact report that was just published in March, it is said about the science committee that it should be restructured and empower the scientific committee to provide stronger scientific leadership and direction. We've been asking for a science lead a few years ago. We didn't get actually candidate, but we're still suffering at some point that we don't have this science lead that will help to guide the society, giving some plan in terms of the science. The science committee is active and try its best, but we still don't have this science lead at some point that I think the society needs. So if we actually structure better or work better in a sense through the executive body, scientific committee, and also organizing better our Congress, stop reinventing the wheel, because this is what we're doing every year, because the Congress is moving from one place to the other. The scientific program committee is always a new people. There's nobody coming from the previous scientific program committee, and it makes things difficult to actually think long-term in the organization. So if we will organize better this upper part of the graphic you see, I think it will be easier also to work with partner, and also we will be able to better support the peripheral committee we have. So it's not question of reinventing the wheel, but it's make it roll better. So I hope we have time to discuss a little. Merci.
Thank you, Serge. Yeah, I appreciate those comments on how we could make the Congress better in the future, especially given your expertise. We are at time. I don't see any questions in the chat. We do have about a minute left. If anybody wanted to provide feedback to Serge. Serge, maybe just quickly, my feedback is I would like to see a better balance between the theoretical and applied science talks and the community services and education. Yeah, so I'd be in support of that.
Okay.
I don't see any comments online. Oh, very good and sustainable approach, Serge. Merci.
Okay, merci.
There- Yeah,
I can
so you're-
just I can just add that, like, it's been 4 times I'm in the science program committee, and basically I've been working with different people all the time. So we don't have a structure now that allow us to think long term for the Congress, and I think this is what we need.
yeah,
And that's my way of thinking that, okay, that's the way we could actually put a permanent cell that could actually think about longer term.
yeah, yeah, and would save some time and effort in the annual scientific program committee work. So I'm hoping that as the president, you can move that forward. There was another comment. I relate to your plea. I was a member of the scientific committee for many years, and it was the major committee of CMOS. I grew out of the original formation of SMC. It needs more visibility.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff.
All right, we are at time. I'm just going to quickly share my screen and invite you. Oh, I don't think I'm sharing it. Hang on. There is a couple more multidisciplinary sessions occurring on Thursday at 14:05 Eastern Time on June 6th, and then another multidisciplinary session occurring right out of that at 15:55 Eastern Time as well. Thank you again to all our speakers. I really appreciate your presentations, as well as everybody that attended this session. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Vanessa.